Fox News has been dropping significantly in the ratings as Trump supporters flee to competitors like One American News and Newsmax. And Newsmax has seen a 750% increase in their ratings. One of their top hosts, Greg Kelly, is now up to about 1 million in the ratings every night, I believe. It was CNN that reported that. Well, right now, Tucker Carlson is in hot water among Trump supporters. He's calling for Sidney Powell, Trump's lawyer, to show us her evidence. Now, according to Tucker Carlson, he reached out to her and she refused to provide any evidence. He said that she eventually got angry and said, "Stop contacting me." Now, Tucker has absolutely said there are irregularities, there's fraud, these things should be looked into. But when he went to Sidney Powell, who made very, very bold claims, she had nothing. Now, here's where it gets spicy. Sidney Powell says she actually did give Tucker Carlson evidence. And more to the point, Trump supporters are arguing she shouldn't be releasing all of the evidence in the court of public opinion, which they actually said at their press conference, because they wouldn't get a fair shake. Not only that, it would make the judges angry. So listen, there are two divergent realities. One in which it is a fact Donald Trump had the election stolen from him. There are mathematical anomalies. And I'll tell you this, from where I stand, I have seen the mathematical anomalies. They exist. They're very strange. I have seen the sworn affidavits alleging fraud. They exist. It is evidence. I have seen widespread irregularities. They exist. Does this mean that Donald Trump is correct when he says he won the election if not for the widespread voter fraud or it being rigged? That is not proven. I can't say he's correct or not. He said that he made the claim. Well, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. We have evidence. And I put it this way every time we hear the smoke alarms going off, it would be prudent of us to check to see if there is fire. But the mainstream media doesn't want to do that. They don't want to look for evidence. They want to claim it doesn't exist. Tucker Carlson is in an interesting position because he's similar to me saying, yes, we see the evidence. And now he wants to see more. You know what? I agree with Tucker. I want to see something. To be fair, they've put out some affidavits. I've seen that. But the big deal, the Kraken, I suppose, as it were. I think this is the Kraken. I don't know what the Kraken is. They keep saying release the Kraken. It's like the meme now. Apparently, Dominion voting systems, according to the Trump campaign, were flipping votes from Biden to Trump. Now, I don't know if that's true, but I can tell you that there was a reported glitch in Michigan where 6,000 Trump votes went to Biden. And it was only because a GOP member saw this and said, that makes no sense. How is a Republican county voting for Biden in these numbers? Turns out, glitch. They later came out and said, no, human error. Well, forgive me if I don't take your word for it. If we have evidence that votes switched, and they did, then we should look into it. In Georgia, in 3 different counties, they found votes for Trump. Now, that sounds like some kind of human error, I suppose. But if we know that it happened one time, we heard the alarm. It's time to check it. Especially, I think that the official numbers now out of Georgia are that Joe Biden's lead dropped by about 13% when they did this. It wasn't really an audit. It was like a risk limiting audit or whatever when they found these ballots. I think we need to actually take a hard look at these ballots simply because we have so many affidavits saying that these ballots were, they had no creases. They were perfect looking and it looked like they were machine printed. That's a sworn affidavit. It's circumstantial evidence. From there, we should probably get some kind of investigation. But you know what I love? I love about all this. Who was that guy, Bubba Wallace? His pull rope from his garage triggered a bunch of FBI agents to descend on NASCAR. And now we've got sworn affidavits alleging fraud and we can't get anything? Therein lies the big problem. Now, I can't tell you who's right or wrong in this capacity. Sidney Powell fires back. Tucker Carlson was insulting, demanding, and rude, saying, in fact, I sent an affidavit to Tucker that had not even attached to a pleading yet to help him understand the situation. I offered him another witness who could explain the mathematics and the statistical evidence far better than I can. I'm not really a numbers person, but he was very insulting, demanding, and rude. And I told him not to contact me again in those terms. Who's lying? Tucker says that he reached out for evidence and they didn't give him any. He has this big, long piece. And I think he fairly approaches a lot of the questions of fraud. But I'll tell you what I think. I think Tucker Carlson, and with what limited respect this is deserving, will call out the issues that need to be talked about. But I do think he's begun hedging his bets. That's about it. I'm not going to play any games. As long as there's outstanding evidence, I will call for it to be investigated. And I will absolutely say, as I've said, release the Kraken sounds an awful lot like trust the plan. But if Tucker Carlson reached out for evidence and Sidney Powell did provide some, it sounds like Tucker's hedging his bets. He goes on to say the media is not interested. If you watch the coverage after the press conference, you saw credentialed reporters all saying, basically what they're clowns or whatever. Giuliani says the Jacob affidavit has been made public, but they can't be bothered to check. Instead, they launched new editorials about how dishonest and crazy Giuliani is. They're making fun of him for sweating. They're showing these photos that make him look crazy. I am not a fan, and I will not trust the media when they don't take these things seriously or they don't play fair. Giuliani claimed that voters in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh were allowed to change their ballots after the fact. So this is the key point of Trump's lawsuit in Pennsylvania. That some outlets were allowed to, that some districts were allowed to cure, meaning if their ballot was deficient in some way, they'd notify the voter and others weren't, thereby taking away the right of some people to vote. That's what the judge asked. To put it simply, the way I see it is this. If you ask people, we're going to have a fair race, everybody's going to run. And then right before the race starts, you say, oh, hey, you've got to fix your shoes. You can put your shoes on. And the other person isn't given the opportunity to put their shoes on. Well, then clearly the person wearing shoes is going to win, right? That's the big problem. In Democrat counties, they were allowed to cure. But anyway, I digress. It's a pretty long-winded thing. He goes on to say, on Sunday night, Tucker Carlson Tonight texted Sidney Powell after watching one of her segments. What Powell was describing would amount to the single greatest crime in American history. Millions of votes stolen in a day. Democracy destroyed. The end of our centuries-old system of self-government, not a small thing. Now, to be perfectly clear, we did not dismiss any of it. We don't dismiss anything anymore, particularly when it's related to technology. He goes in and mentions that they actually do segments on UFOs. He says, there's evidence of a lot of things that responsible people dismiss out of hand as ridiculous are in fact real. The louder the Yale Political Science Department and the staff of the Atlantic magazine scream conspiracy theory, the more interested we tend to be. That's usually a sign you're over the target. A lot of people with impressive sounding credentials in this country are frauds. They have no idea what they're doing. They're children posing as authorities. And when they're caught, they lie, and then they blame you for it. We see that every day. It's the central theme of our show and will continue to be. That's a long way of saying we took Sidney Powell seriously with no intention of fighting with her. We've always respected her work. We simply wanted to see the details. How could you not want to see them? So we invited Sidney Powell on the show. We would have given her the whole hour. We would have given her the entire week, actually, and listened quietly the whole time at rapt attention. But she never sent us any evidence, despite a lot of polite requests. When we kept pressing, she got angry and told us to stop contacting her. When we checked with others on the Trump campaign, people in positions of authority, they also told us Powell had never given them any evidence to prove anything she claimed today at the press conference. Powell did say that the electronic voting is dangerous, and she's right, but she never demonstrated that a single actual vote was moved illegitimately by software from one candidate to another, not one. Why are we telling you this? We're telling you this because it's true. And in the end, that's all that matters. The truth is our only hope and our best defense. It's how we are different from them. We care what's true. We know you care too. Maybe Sidney Powell will come forward soon with details on exactly how this happened and precisely who did it. We are certainly hopeful that she will. What happened will be the vote counting. What happened with the vote counting this month at the polling places in Detroit and the polling places in Philadelphia, and so much else actually matters. It matters no matter who you voted for. Whether or not you think this election is already over, until we know the answers to those questions conclusively and we can agree on them, this country will not be united. Now, what's at issue here? Because I agree with Tucker. I mean, that was a very rational approach. What's at issue is whether or not Sidney Powell actually sent him evidence, because she says she did. I'll tell you my problem with this. First and foremost, I would not be surprised if Tucker Carlson wants to hedge his bets, but Fox News is burning in, like they're burning down in the ratings. I don't think Fox News intentionally wants to destroy their viewership. So then what's the deal? Are they secretly part of the deep state? I don't know. I should say probably not is the easier way to put it. I don't think so. I think Tucker is fairly reasonable and principled. I will say Fox has been very bad at this outside of Tucker for the most part. Many of the reporters on Fox are saying things like Joe Biden is the president. That's irresponsible. We can project Joe Biden in the winner. I have no problem with saying that. I believe it's very likely Joe Biden will be the next president. But he's not the president-elect right now so long as Trump is fighting. You can argue that Trump is wasting time and throwing a temper tantrum, whatever you want to say. I don't care. Until the Electoral College votes, there is no president-elect. Respect the Constitution. The media wants to just say it. Fine, they can say whatever they want. That's ridiculous. But here's my problem. Sidney Powell coming out and saying, I did send an affidavit to Tucker. Okay. Can you prove that to us? Because I got to trust one of you, right? Tucker says you didn't send him anything. You're saying you sent him an affidavit, but I still can't see the affidavit. And there's no third party to vet that you actually did. To be fair, the response from Trump supporters and from Sidney Powell and the Trump legal team was, we can't publish all of this evidence before we go to court with it. But I tell you this, she mentions a witness that's going to explain the mathematics and statistical evidence far better than I can. There is a lot of mathematical evidence. I don't know how you vet that other than it's just expert testimony. And maybe it matters. Maybe it warrants an investigation to go find hard evidence. I would say so. Evidence is defined as signs or indications of something. And the available body of evidence, the available body of information to indicate that something may be. In which case, seeing all these mathematical anomalies that need to be explained cannot just be debunked by the media. And that's what CNN keeps saying. We've debunked these claims. No, offering up a passive explanation is not debunking anything. It's like if they say, why is it that at 3 a.m, at 3:42 a.m., 143,000 votes came in 98% for Joe Biden or 100% for Joe Biden? They say, oh, easy, because they count them all and then publish the numbers. That's not debunking. That's just you trying to explain something. Debunking would be like going to the actual security camera footage and finding witnesses and having sworn statements where they say, here's exactly what we did and how it works, looking at the machines and saying that's the process. That would be debunking. Just saying it doesn't debunk anything. Having a journalist go, oh, that's easy. They all came out at the same time. Duh. That's the concern. They're saying that, well, we trickle in all the other counties, but the mail-in votes all come in at the exact same time. That may be, and I'm fine with that. But you need to do better than just say, that's it. Okay, just telling me here's why you think it happened this way, or here's what they've said is not debunking something. It's not evidence. And I'll tell you what. My friends, I know maybe I go back and forth on whether or not I think Trump is going to win because there's constantly changes in this. I've been saying I think Joe Biden's going to win for some time. I think it's extremely likely. I don't outright just believe Trump lost due to widespread voter fraud. I believe there's evidence of fraud and there's widespread irregularities. Proving the irregularities as fraud is going to be very difficult, but it needs to happen. We need to look into this if we want to actually have a constitutional and democratic election process, which we're not going to have if the media just thinks they can declare victory. But I'll tell you, look, you can make fun of Trump's team and dismiss their claims, but they've got evidence. They got the affidavits. There's irregularities. But you can also, look, to those that want to dismiss the absurdity of these press conferences, I'm sorry, man. There's a middle ground understanding a bit. I think it's fair to say that the Trump legal team has made some mistakes, to put it mildly. It doesn't mean they're going to lose. And there's only a few things. I shouldn't say the Trump legal team necessarily, but the lawsuits on behalf of Trump, certainly many of them have floundered. For Trump himself, his campaign, I'm not entirely convinced. Could they be doing better? Yes. And I think one of the challenges is with Sidney Powell coming out saying that, Hugo Chavez had a hand in these Dominion voting systems and it was used in Venezuela years and years ago. Those are bold claims. And there's an old saying, those who know don't say, and those who say don't know. If you really have the evidence, she should say, wait till our day in court, you'll see. And that's it. Instead, they come out and they make these claims, but they don't back them up. So here's the problem. I recognize 100% that she shouldn't put out evidence. It should go before a judge and not some talk show. That makes sense. But then why come out and make the bold claims knowing you can't actually back them up publicly? Why not just say, right now, we have evidence of fraud and impropriety. The evidence needs to be presented before a judge, before the court of public opinion. For that, I apologize, but please understand we are lawyers. We take these matters very seriously, and we hope you respect the legal process as we bring about these challenges. Instead, we get the Dominion voting systems, the biggest crime in American history. They're switching votes, millions of votes. Look at the math. It's crazy. Do you have evidence? Well, I can't show you the evidence right now. Fine. Maybe at the worst, it's just irresponsible. But let me show you this. From Powerline. Powerline blog is right-leaning. They've investigated Ilhan Omar to an extreme degree. In fact, most of the breaking news about Ilhan Omar's impropriety comes from Powerline. And they published this. Do Trump's lawyers know what they are doing? Saying today's several of President Trump's lawyers, including Giuliani, Sidney Powell, held a press conference in which they alleged they have convincing, if not conclusive evidence, that the presidential election was rigged. And that in addition to garden variety voter fraud, hundreds of thousands of votes were added to Joe Biden's totals through electronic manipulation. They do bring up very interesting data. Check this out. They mention this. Based on the significant anomalies and red flags that we have observed, we believe there is a significant probability that election results have been manipulated within the Dominion Premier system in Michigan. Another statistical red flag is evident in the number of votes cast compared to the number of voters in some precincts. A preliminary analysis using data obtained from the Michigan Secretary of State pinpoints a statistical anomaly so far outside of every statistical norm as to be virtually impossible. There were at least 19 precincts where the presidential votes cast compared to the estimated voters based on reported statistics exceeded 100%. This is a screenshot of a list of 19 precincts. We can see in Benville Township, estimated voters to the reported votes, I suppose, is 350%. Voter turnout well exceeded the amount of votes they were actually supposed to get. Monticello was 144. Monticello P2 was 138. We can see 104, 103. Numbers exceeding 100% are huge red flags. They say Wayne County uses Dominion equipment. 46 out of 47 precincts, townships display a highly unlikely 96% plus as the number of votes cast. Using the Secretary of State's number of voters in the precinct township, and 25% of those 47 precinct townships show 100% turnout. You know why 100% turnout is typically impossible? Because people move and people die. That's it. I was reading about this in Australia, where they have compulsory voting and you can vote online or by mail. They still only get to around 90 to 95% turnout because people move and people die. Yet here, we have seen major red flags in many of these districts. The reason I'm showing you this, and the reason Powerline asked, do Trump's lawyers know what they're doing, is that these are in Minnesota, not Michigan. They say perhaps someone confused MI for Minnesota instead of Michigan. Like someone on the Trump legal team was looking at this, saw MI and thought it meant Michigan. I don't know how that would play out. Somebody made a mistake. Maybe they meant to say, look at Minnesota. Instead, they said, look at Michigan. Regardless, this is being called out from everyone on the left and many people on the right. Many people on the right who are Trump supporters saying, look, we want him to win, but this is ridiculous. Here's my position. I don't know who's right, Tucker, Sidney, whatever. I don't care. I really don't. You know what I care about? Show me the evidence. And until then, I will not impugn the honor of Sidney Powell. She can do her thing and she can say what she wants. And I'm chilling, man. The media is freaking out saying this is dangerous to our democracy. She needs to stop. And I'm like, who cares? If it turns out she's saying wingnut crackpot nonsense, then we just carry on with our lives. And if it turns out she has the evidence, then we move forward with some kind of criminal prosecution, I guess. I'll tell you what is interesting. She says Dominion did this thing, right? Apparently, Dominion was supposed to testify before some group of politicians, I guess, Republican GOP in Pennsylvania said they pulled out at the last minute. Why would they do that? And they're lawyering up. So a lot of people think there may actually be impropriety on the part of Dominion. But to be honest, because they're being accused, so they're going to lawyer up. Dominion, I guess, is a Canadian company. Why are we using foreign companies with proprietary software for our election systems anyway? That's ridiculous. And when you get someone like Justin Trudeau talking about some reset, the Great Reset, come on, man. We should not be listening to this. But I'll tell you what, Republicans say there's no way in hell Trump lost. Brett Fryer is a middle-class Republican, a 50-year-old chiropractor in this West Texas town, Sundown. He owns a small business. He has 2 undergraduate degrees and a master's degree in organic chemistry. He attends Southcrest Baptist Church in nearby Lubbock. Fryer didn't much like Donald Trump at first. He voted for Ted Cruz in the primaries. Now, Fryer says he would go to war for Trump. He has joined the newly formed South Plains Patriots, a group of a few hundred members that includes a reactionary force, about 3 dozen, including Fryer and his son. This guy wasn't a fan of Trump in 2016. He didn't like him in the 2016. He voted for Ted Cruz in the primary. There are a lot of people who switched for Trump. And they straight up say, check this out. Quote, if President Trump comes out and says, guys, I have irrefutable proof of fraud, the courts won't listen, and now I'm calling on Americans to take up arms, we would go, said Fryer, wearing a button-down shirt, pressed slacks, and a paisley tie. I show you this to leave you with one thought as we wrap this segment. It doesn't matter what you think is true. Now, I think when it comes to saving the planet, in terms of environmental destruction, or humanity in terms of energy technologies and the economy, truth is very important. Understanding the science and the facts are very important. When it comes to political power, it isn't. And when you have the left demanding that they get power because they're the saviors, and the right demanding power because they think there's nefarious elements trying to steal the election or hurt people, it doesn't matter what is true. It matters what people believe. And it's an unfortunate reality. Not that I'm a fan. I think it's horrifying. But if these people say, I trust Trump more than I trust the media, and that's a lot of people, if Trump comes out and says the fraud is irrefutable and they release proof, but the courts don't care, you're going to find a lot of people are going to be very much Trump loyalists. So we were at a very pressing moment in our history. The fact that people would immediately turn on Tucker and not hear him out and say, you know what? Maybe Tucker's wrong. Maybe Sidney should release evidence. I like his show. I think he's honest. No, they're straight up saying he's abandoned them to join the deep state or whatever, or he's turned his back on them, or he was always a shill, controlled opposition, whatever. Because people, they have their tribes, and there are diehards in their tribes. But I'll tell you all, left or right, the biggest tribe is the leave me alone tribe, and that presents a serious problem for the right. The left controls cultural institutions, which means they don't have to do anything for the most part to seize power because people want to be left alone and they won't fight back. That means the left can harass, censor, demonetize all of these things to conservatives, and the leave me alone faction just says, leave me alone. So conservatives are getting crushed in many ways, and that'll be the future. Then eventually the leave me alone people will be the conservatives, and they'll beg and they'll cry, and then they'll get crushed too. I mean that figuratively, by the way. Look, I don't know if Sidney Powell did or didn't send evidence. She says she did. I have no reason to think she's lying. I wonder why Tucker said she didn't. Pick one, right? In the end, you're going to have the left saying Trump is cheating and trying to overthrow the results of the election. And you're going to have the right saying Trump is fighting back against the coup who did steal the election. Where that leads us, I don't know, probably chaos. But I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. It is a different channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.